Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
Brech, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for being with us. And we were speaking a little bit before we started, and I can already say that I know this is going to be a great interview because you seem like such a nice guy, and I'm so pleased to have you here with us today.
I'm pleased to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about, first, and what we always like to start with here is, how did you first get involved in golf? And really, like, what was the first time that you picked up a club, and then what was that first aha moment that you said to yourself, you know, I think I want to do this as a career?
Well, as far as picking up golf, probably like many people, I picked it up first from my father. He passed away in 2010, but he was a college player back in the day. He played actually a little bit at LSU, and he played at U of H. And he passed away in 2010 at age 77. So this was many, many years ago when he played college golf. But at age 6, I was kind of pilling around with some small clubs around the house. I'd putt on the carpet. And then by about age 7, he took me out to the golf course and showed me how to hold it and grip it and swing a golf club. And then by age 8, I was so hooked that I started playing in some little small tournaments. I remember the first tournament was called the Popsicle Open. It was a 3-hole tournament at age 8, and everybody got a popsicle afterwards, and that's really when it started.
Yeah, that's a great way to get kids involved in it, is to say, hey, you know, if you win, you get a popsicle. So, because what kid doesn't want a popsicle? They'll do whatever they can to get a popsicle. That's great. Exactly. So then, when was that aha moment where you said, or was it like when you went to college, or was it after that, or, you know, I mean, what really was the aha moment? So
I would say I was very competitive as a junior, and when I was in college, I always had a knack for wanting to know more of kind of why things happened in the golf swing, and probably to a little bit of my downfall. I wanted to know why. I think a lot of the great players just want to know what to do. They don't really care as much about why they need to do it. But I played at a school called Abilene Christian, and in '89 I went to college, and then in '90 a player showed up named Jeev Singh from India. And Jeev ended up having a great career in Asia and Europe, but he was on my college team, and Jeev had the most unique golf swing. You might have to pull it up and look at it sometime, that you would ever see for a guy that actually was a great junior, great college player, and ended up making $12, $13, $14 million. But he had a golf club at the top that was so laid off and so open, you would just think that he might shoot 120. And so I started thinking about, man, how did he do that? And the way he putted and chipped, just very unique style. I mean, he really kind of dug it out of the dirt, so to speak, in India. And so that always interests me to know, man, how is this guy so good? And then I took a lesson, took a few lessons, but I took a lesson in 1990 from Butch Harmon in Lochinvar. And just hanging around Butch during that couple days, I was there. I took an hour each day, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I like what he's doing. He would tell me stories about working with Norman and different players. And I said, man, if this playing thing doesn't work out, I kind of am interested about teaching golf. So I got out of school in 94, and I went straight into teaching in Dallas in a really big driving range because I didn't want to play. I was burnt out. I'd played my whole life competitively and played okay in college, but not as good as I was as a junior. I grew a lot my senior year of high school, like 6.5 inches, and that took a while to readjust my game. And I got back to where I was a pretty good college player, but not to the same level for my field that I was playing with as a junior in high school. So I wanted to take some time off, and so I had the opportunity to go teach at a big driving range in Dallas. And I was around a bunch of different teachers, some Hank Haney guys, natural golf guy, and John Jacobs guys, and so I was around all this mix, and I didn't know I wanted to teach full time as a career yet, but it was during that time right out of school where I landed that teaching job that I said, well, this is definitely something that I want to do, and that's kind of really what spurred me on to say I think I'm going to make a career out of this. And that's where I got started in Dallas back in the mid '90s. Now I did have a little stint in playing from '98 to 2000. After I'd already taught 5 years, I got back into playing. I wanted to scratch that itch, and that lasted a couple 2.5 years. And I said, well, I think if I'm going to stay in golf, I'm gonna get back into teaching. It was a little easier for me than trying to play for a living.
So where exactly are you located now, and where are you giving instruction?
So I'm at a place called Barton Creek Golf Academy in Austin, Texas. It is at the Omni Barton Creek Resort. We're a big facility. We have 4 golf courses. We have 2 Fazios, Crenshaw and Palmer. So we have a lot of golf. Have a big membership with a hotel. And then obviously the resources of all the people in Austin. So we have a nice channels of people that come through our academy. And that's where I am, Austin, Texas.
So do you do anything inside also, or like what is your setup there?
So we do have a building. We have just one hitting bay. It was built when this particular Fazio course was built back in 1999. This one course has been open since then, and that's where the academy is. We have one in-out bay. We have 5 covered hitting stations. We have an office. So I'd love to have more than one bay. At some point, maybe they'll let me expand on it a little bit. I'm in a lease situation with them right now. Also have a great tee box facility that's dedicated for the academy, and then 2 big short game greens. So we have a nice setup. And so yeah, I have the opportunity to get out of the weather if we need to, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that we're here in Naples, and even here, there's times where you just don't want to be outside. The weather is just not really right for doing a lesson. For us, it's more the heat. I'm not sure how it would be in Austin, but there's times where we'll do things indoors more. Of course, rain and things like that. But really, with us, it's heat. So is that kind of the same situation with you?
It is heat, and I don't have an indoor situation from the standpoint of where it's fully enclosed and air conditioned and with multiple nets. So my indoor situation is really just an in-out bay that I can get them out of the element. But yeah, it's mainly heat. It gets hot in Texas, and then we get some crazy weather in Texas too. It can change on a dime. So, but for the most part, we're year-round and blessed to be able to teach golf year-round. So I cannot complain about that.
Yeah, that's what I love about here in Florida too, is that it's you have that opportunity. It's kind of tough in August, July, August, but the diehards will gut it out, and they're okay with it, and they'll still, and when they go out and play, they'll just play early morning or they'll play late evening. They'll just try to avoid the mid-afternoon type thing, and they still have a great time.
Yeah, well, it's probably similar. There's areas of Florida that are pretty similar to areas of Texas with the weather, from what I see.
Now, do you have any technology that you use there at your academy?
I do. I have both TrackMan and FlightScope. I've used FlightScope for many years, different models, and have the X2, and then recently, I went ahead and splurged and got a TrackMan 4, so I have both of those. Have a body track, so do a little pressure mat, and have a sand putt lab, and have a few other things that we use, certainly video, and then some mental game stuff. I have a focus band and have a thing called a mind meter that is from a group called Golf Psych that has been out for quite a few years. They're based out of Bernie, Deborah Graham and John Stabler. And the mind meter, similar to the focus band, but a little different. It's it has an algorithm, and it's like similar to what looks like a heart rate monitor, and it correlates your breathing pattern and your heart rate. So it's just another way to measure somebody's tension or arousal level. So that's kind of neat to use.
Is that similar to heart math?
Very similar. Yeah, very similar. Haven't used heart math much, but from what I've talked to people about, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, we have heart math. We use Focus Band. We have a Sandput lab. We use Swing Catalyst as opposed to Body Track, and we have TrackMan, and then we use Foresight. So we have both of those. We don't have Flight Scope. I had Flight Scope at my facility when I was in Pennsylvania, and at that time, for understanding weight shift, I used Swing Guru at that time, which is like a wireless. It picks you up with a camera that they use for like Xbox.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a motion sensor camera, and then it kind of shows you your weight shift and what's going on. It doesn't give you pressure into the ground, but it does show kind of like center of gravity more than center of pressure, like Swing Catalyst does.
Sure.
So now, do you find that when you use that device, Body Track, that you're using for some of your students, or probably for all of your students, do you use what's going on with the ground to kind of control what the ball is doing with them, or what do you use that piece of equipment for more than not?
Well, I think certainly I try to correlate the traces that a player might have, or where they are pressure-wise at what point in the swing. Correlating those pressures to certainly the ball flight. I think that there's certain traces that so many players, certainly at the club level, the weekend warriors, so to speak, that if you can get their trace a little bit more kind of heel to toe-ish in the downswing or diagonal to get them to turn the ball over right to left for a right-handed golfer, I think that's important. I think there's certain traces that I don't want to see, like it wiping to the heel really early in the downswing, or certainly in the backswing, getting to the outside of the back foot or to the front of the back foot too much. So that's kind of what I look at. Now, obviously, it's got its limitations because it can kind of fool you with pressure versus where the mass is and force, and it doesn't show that, so to speak. So it's limited what it can do, but for the most part, if you can know what you're trying to look at and use it how you want to use it, I think it's a pretty good tool. But that's how I use it.
I know that for me personally, like with Swing Catalyst, I like to use it so that players can see what they're doing with their feet and then translate it into feel.
Absolutely.
Because then what they can do is, if they are, let's say, getting too much out over their toes on the downswing, mm-hmm. And then not moving towards their heel, towards the finish, we can start to see the ball do different things. And then when we start to get them to feel that and then see it as they feel it, it seems like it's easier for them to get that weight transfer happening at the correct time in their swing and in the correct sequence. And it actually seems to help, in my case, accelerate the process pretty quickly, because I believe that golf is really about feel. If you don't know what your body is doing, if you can't feel what your body is doing, and a lot of people will think they're feeling a certain thing, and then when they see it, it's not what they think they're feeling.
That's right, yeah.
And that can make a huge light bulb go off in their head and go like, oh my gosh, now I understand what you're talking about. And then you have them start to feel it and see it and say, see it, and then all of a sudden they see it. And it really makes a huge. I think that it's to me one of the greatest things to help accelerate the learning process.
No doubt about it. And even just at setup, where they're trying to feel where their weight is and where their balance is and where their center pressure is as far as heel to toe, and just what what is balance? And a lot of them will go, wow, that's 50-50. That's evenly dispersed. That doesn't feel, that feels different.
Sure.
So no, it's a wonderful tool, and that's probably my next purchase if I have one down the pike is the swing cat or something of that nature with the force and everything else. I've certainly been around it and have seen it in use, but that's my next one.
Yeah, I think that a lot of players, too, who are like higher handicap players, think that I don't need all these bells and whistles. This is what a tour pro needs and this and that. But I totally disagree. I think that it helps them understand a lot faster the translation of what they're feeling and how to create a little bit of ground force, to create a little bit more power, to get a little bit more. Because how many students do you have that come to you and say, this is what I hear all the time. I want to be more consistent, and I want to hit the ball farther.
Who doesn't want to do that?
I think that everybody wants to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I even get guys come in who are 3 handicap, and they say that to me. I'm like, well, it's hard to be a lot more consistent if you're a 3 handicap.
Right.
But I think we need to think about your consistency on the putting green more than likely, if you're a 3. Than we do off the tee or into the green. But we'll examine that and we'll see what happens. And a lot of times too, what even players of that level don't really understand what their feet are doing.
That's right. And even in the short game like putting, I mean, to get them on a pressure mat to get balanced. I mean, balance and putting and getting everything to where your joints are aligned, so to speak, if you want to say that, but everything is balanced is a huge thing in putting. I work with players all the time, having them stand on something between their arches just to really feel balanced, because it doesn't take much from day to day. Why do I putt well one day? I mean, obviously there might be other factors, confidence and all that stuff that goes with putting, but balance is something I think gets overlooked sometimes, and it's extremely important in putting.
I totally agree. I mean, I know that if you look at any sport, golf, baseball, tennis, soccer, hockey, football, in order for them to play at their highest level, their body has to be in balance. If they're not in balance, they're not going to be able to, let's say in football, catch that ball or throw that ball as far or basically break tackles. I mean, if you're out of balance, whether you're tackling or being tackled, it's going to happen a lot easier if for the guy who's getting tackled. If he's in balance, he's going to be a lot more solid. And for the guy who is tackling, he has to be in balance in order to knock the other guy off balance. I mean, that's right. Kind of the object, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, I think, in golf, they don't really take into account how incredibly important balance is, and it's just a fundamental. That builds a solid foundation.
No doubt about it. Yeah. I think it's important, and when you watch players certainly that are hitting it a mile, jumping off the ground halfway down at the right time, that's dynamic. In balance, if you want to call it that, but they're balanced at the right time, and they're delivering the club well at the right time, and all that's happening before they're pushing up and getting some launch off the ground. But that's a whole nother topic from that standpoint. But no, I couldn't agree with you more. Balance is a huge thing, and then how it dynamically moves with the pressure is super important, and all the technology, like all the stuff at the ground. I mean, you have those two connections. We have the ground and we have the handle. And when we can have something that accelerates the learning from a field perspective, I think it's great. And all this stuff, and that's all, you hear that whole debate about technology in general. But when it's used correctly and it's used by the teacher that has gone through it enough to know that how it's used and use it wisely, it only accelerates the learning, in my opinion.
Now, what are some of the points that you touch on, like that are your standards over across the board for most of your students? I know for us at Impact Zone, we teach around like 5 dynamics. And we kind of want the players to make sure that those 5 dynamics are happening correctly. And what we have found that is when they are, they immediately begin to strike the ball better and become better players. Are there some mainstays that you use in your instruction that that you try to make sure that every student is producing?
Sure. I think that, I had the opportunity to work for 9 years or 8 years, a little over 8 years with Chuck Cook. In the last few years, I worked under him. I ran his golf school. And certainly a lot of my background I've had the opportunity to be around different teachers, but Chuck has probably been my biggest mentor. And I think when you're dealing with the better player, everybody is an individual anyway. But let's say, for instance, we're doing a golf school, which we do, or a clinic. You have to have some organization to that, and so I still hang my hat. I'm a big, I have a lot of background in the golfing machine, and so there's still a lot of the basics as far as flat left wrist, decent playing line, lag, all that stuff. That's all important to me. And so, I would say if I hang my hat on anything, that it would be very similar to what I'd call swing builders. If I had a beginner come to me and we were in the full swing setting, I show them how to build the swing in 3 steps. The small swing, which we call the impact drill, it's like a chip. Here's where impact is. We're going to set you up in the impact position. Most of your good players have their weight left, their hands forward, flat left wrist, bent right, hips slightly open, head even slightly behind the ball. So we set them in that position to know this is where home is. This is where you got to get back to, and I want you to hit some shots from here. And this is just basically a bona fide big chip shot you're hitting. And this is how to get forward shaft lean. This is how to get the low point forward. Do a lot of low point drills, and then we grow the swing from there. Now we get your more balanced setup, address position. Now we go into step 2 and build a half swing. Here's what a decent plane line is. Here's how to hinge the wrist at 9 o'clock. Now from here we're going to turn the body and try to go right back through that same impact position to 3 o'clock. And then the final thing is we finish it off with turn. So now the third step is we turn deeper. We get at least a 90-degree shoulder turn if they can. And then talk to them a little bit about how the sequence of the downswing works. So yeah, I think you have to hang your hat on a roadmap. And one thing I learned from Chuck a long time ago is that a lot of the new talk, and I think a lot of it's absolutely true. I mean, everybody's individual. I don't think you can pigeonhole yourself into thinking that one method is going to work for everybody, and that's why I think that serious teachers are always learning and trying to expand their toolbox. But I don't buy into the fact that you can't have an initial roadmap, knowing that 95% of the time you might have to deviate a little bit because everybody's different and everybody has limitations. But I think if you don't have that roadmap, then you can kind of get a little bit lost and sideways, especially if you are trying to research stuff. And that's where you got to be careful with all the new information out there anyway. And I go to a lot of stuff. I just was down at the PGA show, and I'd been around Mike Adams for a while and listened to his stuff, but I wanted to go sit through their 3-day course with EA, and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm always trying to learn, but I think you have to be careful when you start to get too much stuff where you lose organization of what you believe some of the fundamentals are. Because at the end of the day, it always comes back around to those. Yes. What's a good grip? So it's like all the new stuff, how to create power. Well, that's great, but you still have to know how to hit the ball straight and what creates straight. And so that stuff doesn't change that much. I mean, all the stuff with the new technology is wonderful. All the TrackMan, I love TrackMan. I love FlightScope. It accelerates the learning, but at the end of the day, it's about getting that ball to go down, where they want it to go with the target, and then trying to build in speed doing it. And so, yeah, so that's my deal. I think from that standpoint, I hang my hat on. I still have a lot of the old beliefs of some of the golfing machine stuff, and that's where I am with that.
we're very similar. You know, they call impact zone golf golfing machine for dummies. A lot of people will say that, and of course Bobby, you know, Bobby Clampett, for those of you who are unsure who came up with impact zone, worked with golfing machine with Ben Doyle, who was one of the very original golfing machine guys, and Bobby was a young boy and learned from Ben, and Bobby's kind of used those same principles in a little bit simpler terms. I know that for the average player who would try to read the golfing machine, it reads like a textbook for engineering, but it's those things are absolutely imperative. I totally agree. It's a good foundation. Like yourself, I've done the program with E.A. Tischler and Mike Adams. I think that some of the things that they have going are great. I think they more look at trying to figure out what kind of style a player is, instead of trying to put them into a style or make them become a style, so that they can understand what that style is, so they can help their player use the dynamics, as we talked about, from golfing machine or from impact zone, and incorporate them in their own personal style, and help them use that style to create the correct thing at the correct time for their body type.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that information is great. I think what they're, you know, the direction they're going with is very good. I think they're going to help a lot of teachers, and and those teachers are going to help a lot of players with their information. So, yeah, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Ben Doyle, and went out to Carmel, and we would take some trips and go out and see Ben, and you know, Chuck was a big golfing machine, or still is, and so I think that, you know, I won't get into that whole soapbox of the golfing machine, but I think, you know, it gets a bad rap from the standpoint of, for people that have you know, heard about the golfing machine and some of the stories, and then some of the people that have been golfing machine teachers have gone certain directions with the golfing machine, and maybe it didn't work out, and then you might have some of the scientists that disagree with it, and certainly, I mean, Homer, in my opinion, did his best at the time that he could do, and still a lot of it's very, very solid stuff. But it's kind of, you know, some of the D-plane stuff and all the new ball flight laws. I mean, we're learning more about that, but a lot of that's not new. I mean, that, you know, we were talking about D-plane hooks. We didn't call them that. You know, Chuck called them, when I learned, you know, really kind of got more into ball flight with Chuck. This was back in the early 90s. Early 2000s, when I started working for him. We called them angle hooks. We knew the club wasn't. We knew if the ball was starting straight or slightly left and a big pull hook, we knew the golfer wasn't over the top. So, you know, or we'd call them undercuts if it was a start right guy coming from the inside and face open and kind of wiping it from the inside. We'd call it, you know, an undercut. It wasn't an over the top cut. So some of that stuff wasn't, you know, isn't new, but it's been repackaged some, and we're all learning. I mean, it's all great information, and the technology of the launch monitors is helping us clean up some of it. So that stuff's very good.
Yeah, I think too that with the launch monitor technology, it allows the student, and not that we go crazy with that stuff with students, but it allows them to verify when an instructor says they're doing a certain thing. This kind of verifies it.
Right.
Yeah, this is what you're doing. And now you know by feel also when you do a certain thing that this is what is happening. And that gives you a better idea as to how to trim the fat away quicker.
Absolutely.
Get to the root of the problem. And I think that the technology, if used in the right way, can really accelerate the learning process tremendously. And that's what I think we all want. And I think that, too, in this day and age, people are so used to instant gratification that they want to improve. They expect to come for some lessons and improve very, very fast. Some players do. Some players don't. Golf is a difficult game. It's a process. It takes time to get better. I related a lot to music. I was involved in music for years, and if you want to take a guitar lesson or a piano lesson, you don't walk in if you dabble with it and take 3 or 4 lessons and then expect to go down to the pub at the corner and entertain the crowd with a few songs. It usually and then expect to get a big round of applause after and be the life of the party. So that may happen for some, but the odds are very slim, and it is a process, and it takes time, and it takes a commitment over a period of time. The technology helps us accelerate that time frame, and I think give the student a better understanding as to what's really happening, as opposed to them just trusting us, as to us
Absolutely.
telling them what is happening. We have now something to back up as proof of what
right.
And that's what I like about it. It's
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's TrackMan is speaking. You see what it says? I mean it's a so yeah, it kind of has that big figure of it's the truth, and so from that standpoint, I think it's nothing but helpful for the instructor and for the player to get to the point and facts at a quicker pace. That's the main thing, and then how to take that information and utilize it for that player. Because if you're talking about moving a path or an angle of attack difference or anything, I mean, there's a jillion ways to do all that. So you have to take that information and say it's just a measurement tool. It's not going to show you how to teach, but it's going to show you a little bit more what's going on at such a high speed that it's hard to see that, and it gets to the point faster. But then it's up to the teacher to take that info and apply it correctly to it.
Yeah. So the cat shows up. This is normal.
Perfect.
So
Nice.
This is my daughter's cat, and she's a Maine Coon cat, and she loves to every time I'm sitting at the desk, she loves to hop up, and I think that when she was a kitten, my daughter didn't live at home at that time, and she had a boyfriend who was always sitting at his desk, and the cat would jump up on his lap, and she would mess around with the keys on the keyboard and stuff like that. She doesn't do that now, thank goodness.
We used to have a Maine Coon. I'm familiar with Maine Coons. Kind of
they're like a dog in a cat suit.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
the one
at least this
the
one
we
is.
had didn't like to be a lap cat that much. Yours looks like more of a lap cat. Ours wasn't a big lap cat.
Well, she likes to be a lap cat when she wants to be a lap cat.
Yeah, that's up to the cat.
Not when you want her to be. When you want her to be, she's like, whatever, or she'll just look at you with this funny face. But when she wants to be, she's very adamant about it. She won't leave you alone. She just wants to, lay in your lap and be petted, which is fine. And it always usually happens during a show for me.
There you go.
A lot of people don't realize that, but a lot of times I'm petting a cat while I'm doing an interview just because I don't have a choice.
Perfect.
So yeah, kind of fun. So for folks who want to reach you and come work with you and your expertise, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, our website is bartoncreekgolfacademy.com. So we certainly welcome them to peruse the website, and we have online booking through that website. they can certainly call the Barton Creek Golf Academy or the Omni Barton Creek Resort and get a hold of us in Austin. And we would love to help them with their golf game. We have people that come down and stay at the hotel, and we do some spring and fall golf schools, some 2 and 3 day golf schools. And run a few of those in the spring and in the fall. And certainly we do year-round coaching packages and private lessons, or just somebody that needs to come in and do a little 1 or 2 day quick fix. We do plenty of that as well. So
awesome. So we'll put that information on the page of the podcast page, and it'll also be on the video that we do with you. That'll be on YouTube. All those things for the listeners out there. For some of you who are regulars of the show, you know that we tape the show, and we usually release the episode 3 or 4 weeks later. And we always will let our guests know that, so that they can share it around in social media and things like that. And it's kind of cool that you know, we can get to learn all this information from all these great instructors like yourself. I mean, we're just so glad that you were here. So in parting, what we would like to know is, and I should have probably said this to you earlier so that you could be prepared, but I kind of don't like the prepared thing.
okay.
You know? And that's why you know, sometimes they'll say, well, what kind of questions are you going to ask, so I know what to be prepared for. And I'm a real spontaneous kind of person, and I like to let people's natural selves come out and just ask questions, and let's see where the interview goes. And I enjoy that, and I think that it makes for a better interview, personally. So my question is, if there was a book that you could recommend to your players or to our listening audience that you think would be beneficial to them, and it doesn't have to naturally just be for golf, it could be really in life or anything, what book would you recommend that they read?
That's a good question. I've got a few books over in the corner, and depending on the player, that might be a little bit different, but I work with a lot of high school and college players and some tour players, mini tour players, plenty of those. And I think, and this is probably said a million times to you, but I still think the Talent Code is a great book, especially for the player that is that competitive player that has the desire to take it to that level. It gives you some very good insight to what it takes, whether or not you agree with the 10,000-hour rule or if it's a little more for golf or whatever. But I think that's a wonderful book to give insight to a person that just needs to know what it takes to become an expert or very proficient in whatever field they want to do.
I agree. I've read the book. It's a great book, and I think that even if it's not in their game, even in their career,
that's right.
If it's outside of golf, which many people are outside of golf that listen to this show, this is a great book for them to read because it can translate into other parts of their life. That's
right. Yeah, and I've got 4 daughters that are 13. I've got quadruplet girls that are 13.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
God bless you.
So I'm busy, but I've got one that's now.
That's probably an understatement right there. I'm busy. That's busy, definitely, especially 4 girls. They've got to really keep you busy.
They keep me busy. I've got one that's level 8 gymnast, one that was in gymnastics that just got out. She's doing golf now, which I'm very, very excited about. And then I have 2 volleyball players, and they're all competitive. So they haven't really read the book yet, but that's going to be the next book I recommend because they're talking more about now what they want to do in sports and starting to specialize a little bit more. So I look forward to have them read the book, and they'll get glean some good insight out of that book as well.
That's great. Well, look, thanks so much for being with us. It was a wonderful conversation. We were really pleased to have you. And what we always like to say in parting here is, do your best to keep that ball in the short grass until we meet again.
Absolutely, Bernard. Hey, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on. It was great talking to you.
It was a pleasure. We'll see you later now. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
You've been listening to Breaking Par with your host, Bernard Sheridan. Follow us on Twitter @BreakingPar and on Facebook @Par Breakers Golf Academy. Until next week, try to keep it on the short grass.